Authors from all over the world. Last week we were talking to two different authors from Tasmania by Australia. The next author coming up, she's traveled the world and has so many great stories, but she spent a lot of time in Tanzania. So it's a little confusing to me, but we're going to learn about it right here on our show, Briggs on Books. Welcome to our guest, Terry Repak. By the way, here's a cover of Terry's book, Circling Home. Now, what's the rest of the title, Terry? What I learned?
What I learned by living elsewhere.
What I learned by living elsewhere. There's the cover. And boy, has she lived elsewhere. I think you are in Seattle now.
That's right.
Now, you were a writer. You were a journalist, a writer, and did a lot of stuff like that. And at some point in your life, did you guys shift and go do something else?
My husband is a doctor epidemiologist, so his work is very different. He's mostly been doing AIDS research and treatment and care for most of his career. And we went to West Africa first in the 1990s so that he could work for a big CDC project in Ivory Coast. And then we went to East Africa, to Tanzania, so he could work on a project there as well.
Yeah, and we talked about that last time. What a difference between West Africa and East Africa, and how exciting you got to really experience both. When you're in Tanzania, you did some writing?
I did do a lot of writing. I was able to connect with someone who was the editor of Dar Guide magazine, which is a guide for tourists and expats and locals about things that are going on in Tanzania. And, it's kind of a travel related article, journal. But my articles, it was called Dar Aspects, and Dar es Salaam is the main city there. So I was writing about all different aspects of life in Dar es Salaam. And that included writing about the fish market. I think you have a photo of the fish market at some point. And I would write about the people that were doing AIDS work, volunteers in their communities. So I could write about any number of subjects, and it was a wonderful venue to get me out and let me meet people from all walks of life, mostly, Tanzanians, who were doing really good work for other people.
By the way, this fish market picture, what is that body of water running there? Is that a river? Or?
The body of water, it's a little bay. Dar es Salaam is right on the Indian Ocean, but that's a little bay that comes in. So the fishing boats come up the bay, and these fish were about as fresh as you could get them. They just throw them up on the dock, and you go down and choose what you want for the day.
Now, is that mostly individuals buying these fish?
We'll have most expats who live there know about it, but so do locals. A lot of families will go down there and choose their fish for the day or for a couple of days. Or they would send someone down, like a helper, a cook, someone who worked for them. And that person would bike down there and choose some fish for the day and then bike back. And often they would also skin it and, scale it and debone it and do all of that in your kitchen. So we had somebody who did that for us.
Fascinating. Sorry to ask you all these specific questions, but I've never been there. Now, Tanzania is in what part of Africa?
East Africa, just below Kenya and above Mozambique. And Zanzibar is an island just off of Tanzania mainland, and it joined Tanzania in the 1960s, I think, late 60s. So Zanzibar, a wonderful island where we spent lots of time because it's just culturally so interesting and has amazing beaches.
And that's where, by the way, I think I have a picture here of oyster, blue oyster. That's Zanzibar?
Yep, that's in Zanzibar. And in fact, I love the place so much that it inspired a novel. So I've been rewriting a novel that I started there and hope to publish that in the coming future.
Yeah, I can't believe the whiteness of the sand and how beautiful that beach is. there at
And
Blue
the water
Oyster.
is every bit as beautiful as it looks. It's just
I want to get to Switzerland is where I wanted to get to today. But before we go there, I have a couple of pictures here. You can't see them, but there's maybe a gentleman that's an artist that's created some interesting objects.
yes. I wanted to talk about them because I think the most enriching aspect for me of being in East and West Africa was the chance to meet people who, like artists and um, the guy. You have another picture of a sculptor who makes these beautiful sculptures of he calls them family trees, and
Mm.
it's people climbing on each other's backs and shoulders, and um, it's mahogany. And we brought back a number of these sculptures,
I'm going to see if I
and
can
we gave
zoom in
them
on this one. We're not very good at zooming
great.
in live, but yeah, you can see the people climbing a family tree. That's fascinating artwork.
Yeah, yeah. And the other fellow well, anyway, I was going to say that these artists are all literally struggling artists who sell their work for very little. Expats and locals will buy their work for, I mean, we try to pay a great price. It's good price for them, but it's also a good price for us compared to
Hmm.
what you would pay in the U.S. The
That,
other man, you have a picture of a man standing in front of paintings.
yes, here it is.
This man, Salam Kambi, became a friend, and I really wanted to support his work. He was trying to put his daughters through school, so by selling paintings to friends and colleagues, I was able to help him a little bit. And then when I returned to the U.S. and was living in Atlanta, I arranged an art show for him and helped him to come to the opening. So he was able to get his work out to a much larger audience. And I think deservedly so. He's got a beautiful palette of very bright colors and subjects from abstracts to, you know, people in his area.
One last picture
So,
from that region, the three people sitting.
yeah, these people are also became close friends. They worked around us in um, Ivory Coast, actually, the first place we lived. And the man is Usman. He was the guard for the house where we lived. All Americans attached to the U.S. Embassy had to have a guard, a day guard, and a night guard. And Usman was with us for 6 years. And so we became very close to him. My children did too. And the older woman in that picture is a woman who was a housekeeper for us, part-time. She came a couple days a week. And we just loved her. The younger woman with her is her daughter.
Mm.
Both of them wanted to learn how to bake, so I taught them how to bake bread and cakes and all sorts of things. And am still in touch with them today, 25 years after we met them.
Oh my goodness, they become your family, really. I would imagine.
It is, and you help when you can. They were very happy. I sent them copies of my book, and they're in my book, so they were happy to see them.
By the way, I don't want to lose our subject, which is this book. It's on the screen, circling home. What I learned by living elsewhere. Now, after Africa, did you go somewhere else?
Yes, we went to Switzerland. My husband was still doing AIDS work, but he expanded his portfolio to also include hepatitis.
Mm.
So he was working on hepatitis and AIDS at the World Health Organization. And by this time, we lived there for 4 years. And this was the first post that I didn't have my children with us. And I found that very hard. I was going through, empty nest withdrawal from them. And it was very hard also because my father had just passed away and I worried about my mother and other family members at home. So I felt this sort of push-pull, constantly having to go back to the U.S. to help my mom or my sister. But we did enjoy it. And as you'll see from some of those photos, we got out and hiked. We did a lot of travel to other cities. I think we went to every country in Europe
Yeah.
at some point during those 4 years. So
And here's
it
the
was,
the lake. I have a picture lake, Silvaplana.
lived, we lived, yeah, Silvaplana, that's in the Engadine, which is the far northeastern corner of Switzerland. A beautiful place. It's so beautiful that that's where the World Economic Forum, in Davos has their meetings. But we did a lot of hiking over there. The train rides through the mountain passes
Yeah.
are just phenomenal.
A picture of the
Uh,
Swiss Rambles.
yes, that's one of those hikes that we did. My husband was a big hiker, did the Jura Crest Trail,
Oh my
which was about
goodness.
220 miles along the Jura Mountains.
Yeah. And
And
by the way, I think
I accompanied him when I could.
we see
Yeah.
him at the top of a hill.
Yep, that's it. He's at the crest of the Jura Crest Trail.
Yeah, that's.
So
I don't think we'll be able to see him, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to see him. There he is, top of the
I was
world.
able to I was able to keep up with him somewhat, but he did a lot more than I did.
Yeah, and then finally we have Lake Geneva. How beautiful that is.
Yeah,
So
that's where we were. Our apartment was a stone's throw from that beach where the picture was taken, and we could see Mont Blanc and the Alps on the far side of the lake. We could swim in that lake in the summer. So it was a wonderful base to use in Europe to
Yeah.
live in.
You just captured the moon so beautifully in that picture as well. By the way, are there pictures in your book?
No, no photos. They're all word pictures.
Yeah.
I did a lot of travel writing, so that I describe a lot of the places where we lived. But for more photos, my author website has a lot of photos on that.
And by the way, I think we have that on the screen, terryrepak.com.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I complimented you, I've already memorized the best website in the world, web address in the world. So
You're sweet.
I'm going to go just look at more pictures.
Okay, good. You can also read articles about living in Tanzania, about Switzerland. I have all kinds of links to articles in there. So,
What about people who want to try to visit or live there themselves? Would your website be a guide, or would your book help them get there?
does help a lot. People do live in African countries and in Europe with all kinds of different agencies, like with Peace Corps, international companies, State Department, CDC. But people are also retiring and moving to places like Portugal and Spain. I have several friends that have gone to Europe to retire. So I do think my book is a helpful guide about how to find home in another place, and particularly in a foreign culture. I think people are trying to find home, millions of people every year, because they move, even if it's to another state, to another country. So, yeah, my book would be helpful in that sense.
Yeah. I just, if people are thinking about it and it seems impossible, it's possible. I mean, look at what Terry Repak did, lived all over the place. And now you live in the most beautiful place in the world, Seattle.
Oh, thanks. The other thing that the book is helpful about is raising children in other countries, because this is not something that people really know what's ahead of them when they take children to other countries. So I talk a lot about that because our kids lived 10 of their 18 years in their youth in foreign countries.
They had rich lives as well. I do have a friend who's...
And they speak French fluently now.
That's great, yeah. A friend of mine, they were in another country working, and their daughter did something that seemed harmless, but she had to ship her home because she was like practically engaged. She just got in a cart with a boy, and it's just wherever she was. You don't do that, and you need to know about these things before you go, I guess.
Do.
You need to know the customs and the rules and the sensibilities of these other places. So I guess you really got to learn them.
Oh, yeah, that's the best way to make yourself at home in a new place is to learn the customs and to really just go out of your way, out of your comfort zone to meet people and to, visit sites that are important to them culturally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Terry, obviously I could talk to you for hours and hours because I want to. I got a million questions, but we're about out of time, so I just want to leave you with any last thoughts you have for our viewers, anything you want to tell them about you or your books?
I think what is important in my book are not just the incidences about, climbing Kilimanjaro or visiting Madagascar or meeting local people and how to connect with them, but also how you go through a profound inner journey when you put yourself out and learn about other cultures and live in another country. So I think
Now,
that's
that's great. Now, I know we're
it
out of
in a
time, but
nutshell.
did you say you have other books coming out now?
Well, I'm working on this novel that's based in Zanzibar, so waiting for some savvy agent to snap me up.
Yeah. Well, if they're watching this show, I think they will because they could tell how passionate you are and how very fascinating you are and inspiring too, I should say, Terry.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and hopefully you'll be back in a month or two, and we'll talk some more.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Glad to talk to you anytime.
And for our guests, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more authors right after this.